At the end of August, rumors began circulating about the People Liberation Army's 057 stealth frigate. The ship discreetly entered a mysterious port, but to much surprise, photos of it quickly surfaced on social media. Experts were stunned by what they saw. The vessel, touted as one of China's most advanced, appeared more like a work in progress. It had more flaws than anyone expected. One of the biggest issues was the HQ-10 ship-to-air missile launcher, positioned behind the command tower. Something was clearly wrong. What should have been a launcher with 8 missiles now only had 1 launch hole. This anomaly led to speculation among experts. Could it be a laser weapon? An optical device? Most of them agreed that it was just an HQ-10 model, most likely used to test the capabilities. The lack of a main gun raised further concerns. How could the PLA call this ship advanced if it lacked basic armaments? Discrepancies didn't stop there. Earlier images had shown a vertical launch system, but in the new photos, it was gone. The ship's flight deck appeared imposing, but there wasn't even a hangar door. Even more surprising, the hatch for the sonar array had disappeared, leaving questions about the ship's anti-submarine capabilities. The mast also looks familiar. It looked like a smaller version of Japan's Unicorn stealth antenna system, but it didn't seem like it could hold much equipment. Even more bizarre, the superstructure was completely bare, with no antennas or radars in sight. Has their stealth technology gone too far, stripping away basic detection equipment? Experts quickly pieced it together. This ship wasn't built for real combat. It was likely a concept verification platform designed for experiments, testing how to reduce radar signals or trying out new propulsion systems. Some suggested that it was meant to test an all-electric hybrid propulsion system, similar to the USS Zumwalt-class destroyers. The idea was to prove efficiency and cut costs, while also powering high-energy weapon systems in the future. However, with so few weapons currently installed, questions remain about how effectively the system can be tested for energy efficiency. The PLA has been showcasing high-tech equipment in recent years, each piece more impressive than the last. On paper, it's often a disappointment with a closer look. Just last August, the 057 frigate was revealed for the first time. By May, it was out for sea trials, but all it had garnered was public ridicule. The PLA has been pushing forward at an accelerated pace. The 003 aircraft carrier, for example, underwent 4 sea trials in just a few months. This urgency is likely driven by mounting international tensions. They're cutting short development and testing times, despite the flaws, desperate to get these ships in use. It feels like they're preparing for something big, almost like they're racing against the clock. As for the 057, it was first clearly spotted last November at the Liaoning shipyard. At that time, it still had its main gun, vertical launch system, and flight deck, and looked somewhat respectable. It seemed they had put in a lot of effort to improve stealth, borrowing ideas from Sweden's Visby-class corvette and the US's Zumwalt-class destroyer. In the photos from last year, the ship had what appeared to be a decent vertical launch system, likely similar to France's Mica VL air defense system. It was enough for basic missile interception. Essentially, the 057 frigate is a luxury upgrade of the 056 model, with slightly better protection and improved strike capabilities. 56-class ships, meanwhile, will likely patrol coastal waters, securing the mainland safety. The 057, as an upgraded version, is expected to be deployed in high-tension areas like the South China Sea or the Taiwan Strait. It's tougher than the 056, better suited for complex battle environments. This will allow the larger ships in the Chinese Navy to take on more distant missions. As for the 056 class frigates, 22 were commissioned in 2013, but by 2021 they had already been converted into Coast Guard vessels, a service life of just 8 years. This shows the flaws in their design and production. Rather than upgrading them, they were handed over to the Coast Guard, which is now using naval frigates to intimidate smaller nations like the Philippines. The PLA still has about 50 of the 056A frigates, which are primarily coastal submarine hunters. They're mainly stationed close to home, keeping an eye on submarines. So why develop the 057? Is it about stealth? Not really. It's not invisible to radar. It just looks like an ordinary civilian vessel. The idea is to blend in with the busy waters of the first island chain, making it harder for the US, Japan, and Taiwan to detect. So in many ways, the 057 isn't much different from the 056. Long-distance missions, however, are still left to larger ships like the 054A frigate, which Chinese shipyards are mass-producing in an upgraded version, the 054AL. Some point out that the U.S. Naval Intelligence reported China's shipbuilding capacity as over 200 times that of the U.S. That was likely last year's statement. They used the U.S.'s Constellation-class frigate as an example, which was originally scheduled for delivery within 48 months, but is now long overdue. In reality, the U.S. is unlikely to rush ship production in the manner seen in China. If a vessel like China's 056 class frigate were to serve only 8 years before being retired, it would likely provoke Congress to question if they were wasting taxpayer money. When U.S. officials praise China's rapid shipbuilding capabilities, it's often seen as a push for increased defense funding rather than a genuine endorsement of China's methods. Also, the U.S. Navy's slower pace has its reasons. Its fleet is already large and capable. There's no immediate global conflict requiring rapid production. China, on the other hand, is playing catch-up, building as fast as it can, but their ships are only about a third the size of America's. Once China's Navy reaches a certain size, they'll likely struggle to maintain such large shipbuilding operations. The reason is simple. Once China's military needs are met, they'll be left maintaining their own fleet. There won't be much need to build new ships. After all, few countries are interested in buying Chinese warships. Most prefer U.S.-made ones. Among the world's leading naval powers, many rely heavily on U.S. technology. Japan and South Korea's primary vessels are all U.S.-built. The same holds true for countries like Australia, or those in Southeast Asia and South America, whose naval ships and weapons systems are largely American-made. Even Europe's allies rely heavily on U.S. equipment. The UK, for instance, uses American-made intercontinental missiles on its strategic nuclear submarines. As China's Navy approaches saturation and its demand for new ships declines, the future of Chinese shipyards becomes uncertain. Without new naval orders, their production lines could face a significant slowdown. Currently, the 054A frigate is being upgraded to the 054AL, with Chinese shipyards producing them in large numbers. But isn't the upgrade supposed to be the 054B? What happened? It turned out that the PLA built two 054B ships and was disappointed. The 054B was intended to be China's blue water frigate, but doubts have emerged about its ability to operate effectively in deep waters. Leaving aside its ability to protect aircraft carriers, just based on its hardware, the 054B seems like a half-finished attempt at a blue water frigate. The radar on the 054B frigate is large and operates on a dual-band system, offering decent anti-jamming capabilities. But the radar isn't high enough. It's nothing like the Spy-6 radar on the U.S. Constellation-class frigate, which is mounted much higher and can see much farther. In long-range operations, the 054B might not detect enemy aircraft or missiles in time. Now let's look at the weapons. The 054B has 32 vertical launch systems, the same as the 054A. However, it doesn't have the advanced CCL vertical launch system found on the 052D or 055 frigates. Instead, it uses the HQ-10 surface-to-air missiles and the U-8 anti-submarine missiles. Its combat power is fairly average. In comparison, the U.S. Constellation class can load 4 ESSM medium-range air defense missiles in each launcher. It can also carry NSM anti-ship missiles and possibly even Tomahawk cruise missiles. The difference between the 32 launchers of the 054B and the Constellation is obvious. Sustained firepower is crucial in naval warfare, and the 054B's limited number and variety of missiles leave it at a disadvantage in long-range battles. The propulsion system also raises concerns. The 054B displaces just over 6,000 tons, while the Constellation class comes in at 7,300 tons, designed specifically for long-range missions. The Constellation uses an integrated electric propulsion system, which is fast and fuel-efficient. In contrast, the 054B has limited endurance and would need frequent refueling during extended missions, especially when escorting an aircraft carrier. Air defense is another weak spot. The Constellation class is equipped with ESSM missiles, which are standard for modern warships. They can easily handle incoming anti-ship and cruise missiles. The 054B, however, relies on the HQ-10 system. While it offers some air defense, it can only intercept missiles at close range. In a saturation attack, the 054B would likely become a target. Simply put, the 054B tries to emulate the Constellation class but doesn't come close in air defense. Regarding multi-role capabilities, the Constellation class can carry Tomahawk cruise missiles, giving it land attack capability. The 054B has no such option. It's limited to anti-ship and anti-submarine roles. Modern naval warfare, especially in long-range operations, requires flexibility. The 054B's small weapon arsenal makes it poorly suited for complex tactical scenarios, widening the gap between it and the Constellation class. Realizing that the 054B's future doesn't look very bright, the CCP quickly introduced a new plan. That's the 057 stealth frigate. The current version of the 057 weighs only 2,000 tons. It's mainly suited for patrolling areas like the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. Trying to compete with the U.S. Constellation class in deep-sea operations with this 2,000-ton vessel shows how desperate the CCP has become. There are reports that the 057 will eventually expand to 6,000 to 7,000 tons. Expanding a ship from 2,000 to 7,000 tons is not a simple task. It's not simply a matter of adding more steel and materials. Increasing tonnage requires integrating additional weapons and equipment while preserving the vessel's stealth capabilities. The key for a stealth frigate is to minimize its radar signature. As the ship's size grows, and more radar systems, weapons, and equipment are installed, it raises questions about whether the frigate can still maintain its intended stealth performance. So, growing the 057 from 2,000 to 7,000 tons is no easy task. The small prototype may look impressive now, but it faces many challenges when deployed for long-range missions. Can it keep its stealth features? Will its range be enough? Is its firepower strong enough? These are all big questions for the engineers. So, if the CCP ever manages to build a 7,000-ton stealth frigate, it'll be interesting to see how well it actually performs. China's frigate development has been a long journey. When the 054A was introduced, it was cheap, effective, and ready for use. Then came the 054B, which was expected to be a major upgrade. But aside from its dual-band radar and slightly better surveillance capabilities, the 054B's anti-ship and anti-submarine functions weren't much better than the 054A's. There was no revolutionary improvement. In a fleet, the 054B surveillance capabilities aren't particularly useful either. The cost of the 054B is also much higher. Most of the budget has gone into its radar, electronics, and weapon systems. With only a few 054Bs built so far, the early development costs have been spread across each ship, further driving up the price. Even before its combat capabilities are fully tested, the 054B is already draining the military budget. Regarding the propulsion system, it's unclear whether the 054B uses a combined diesel and gas system or an integrated electric system. Most likely, the two 054Bs are experimental ships that will stay in service for a few years before any decision on mass production. In the meantime, it would make more sense to keep building the reliable and affordable 054A while the 054B undergoes further testing. The 054A is still in production, now with upgrades under the 054AL model. The hull has been lengthened to fit the Z-20 helicopter, which sounds like an improvement. However, this modification introduces new challenges. Has the propulsion system been upgraded to handle the change? Has the ship's balance been considered? Can it remain stable in rough seas, or will it struggle in heavy waves? The 054AL has also switched from a 100mm large-caliber naval gun, which looks powerful but is only effective against light coastal targets. In modern warfare, missiles are the dominant weapons. Naval guns are merely for display. The 054AL seems out of place, perhaps designed for lower-intensity conflicts. The 368-type X-band radar is said to have improved detection of low-altitude stealth targets, but it's still a dual-faced radar, unlike the U.S. Navy's four-faced systems, such as the AN Spy-6. The 368 radar lags behind in both range and precision. Against advanced U.S. anti-ship missiles like the NSM, the 368 radar might only detect them at close range, leaving little time for response. Despite the hype, this radar is not up to the task. What's even more surprising is the claim that the 054AL is being prepared for the Taiwan Strait. While the 054AL has seen some improvements, it's still a relatively cheap frigate with average performance. For a navy that claims to be the second largest in the world, relying on upgraded old ships for potential conflict raises doubts about their effectiveness. The CCP has promoted the advancements of the 054B, but there's little concrete evidence to back up those claims. As for the 054AL, while it's marketed as a durable option, the reality is that China simply lacks the resources to build more advanced ships. China's naval strategy isn't about pursuing the best technology. Instead, it's about settling for what works. It's less about quality at a good price, and more about managing with what they can afford. With China's economy now in decline, even building new ships has become a financial challenge. The 054A frigate has been in production since 2002, with 5 batches built so far. It has become a bestseller among medium and large frigates globally. The first batch of 4 054A frigates was built between 2002 and 2008, primarily as test models. From 2009 to 2012, the Navy constructed 12 more, deeming the design reliable enough for regular use. The second batch became the standard version. In 2013, the Navy ramped up production and built 14 more ships, making the 054A a staple in the fleet. Between 2017 and 2022, another 10 ships were built, with nearly all combat features added, marking the peak of the 054A's development. By this point, the PLA had a fleet of 40 frigates, following a straightforward strategy. Build enough ships, and no one will dare to challenge them. Now the fifth batch, the 54AL, has arrived. It's said to have the most significant modifications yet. Starting from ship number 41, at least 10 more are planned. The 054A has put on a new coat and is squeezing out its remaining value. Looking back, the 054A has steadily improved through small upgrades and sheer numbers, becoming a bestseller in the frigate world. But shipbuilding isn't just about quantity. The 054A still has many old problems, like its outdated diesel engines and limited speed. From the outside, it looks like the world's largest frigate fleet, but insiders would know the truth. With so many flaws, it's unclear how these ships would perform in a real conflict. On July 4th, Japan's destroyer JS Suzutsuki entered China's Zhejiang waters, traveling at high speed for more than 20 minutes. A Chinese 054A frigate attempted to follow but couldn't keep up. Despite being less than 90 kilometers from the East China Sea Fleet's command center and well within range, all the PLA could do was issue a warning that said, "Move along quickly." The JS Suzutsuki is no ordinary vessel. As part of the Akizuki class, it displaces 6,800 tons and is powered by 4 Rolls-Royce gas turbines with 64,000 horsepower. It can cover 1,600 kilometers in just 53 hours. In comparison, the 054A frigate, with its 4 diesel engines and a top speed of 27 knots, was outclassed. The JS Suzutsuki easily hit 30 knots, highlighting a key issue with PLA ships. They lack gas turbines for vessels under 7,000 tons. South Korea's Cheongnam class and Japan's Mogami class both use gas turbines, as do the U.S. Perry class frigates, which are over 50 years old. The PLA's 054A and 054B rely entirely on diesel engines. Among the 3 major East Asian navies, the PLA is the only one still using diesel engines for long-range missions, a glaring disadvantage. The PLA's approach to ship development appears to be a case of robbing Peter to pay Paul. The 054A remains the only reliable frigate in service, but its slow speed presents challenges. Within an aircraft carrier battle group, the 054A struggles to keep pace with the carrier, and as of now, no suitable gas turbine solution has been developed to address this shortcoming. Despite heavy investment, the 054B remains experimental and falls short of competing with the U.S. Constellation class. Given this, it's unclear why China continues to build them. It appears to be a waste of resources. Then there's the 057. If the 054B isn't meeting expectations, why continue pouring money into it? Shifting focus into the 057, with its experimental stealth and electric propulsion systems, might make more sense. Though still in its early stages, the 057 at least holds potential for future advancements. The PLA's shipbuilding program seems rushed, with no cohesive long-term plan. Despite design flaws, the spending continues at a rapid pace. This raises questions. Is there corruption behind the scenes?